my top 25 power rankings are not based off of who Vegas thinks are the best teams, or they're not based off of strength of record or strength of schedule. They're based off of my mind's interpretation of all the research that I've done about which teams would do the best versus the better Power 4 teams. Not Vanderbilt, not Northwestern, not Arizona State or BYU or Boston College, all respects to them. And maybe they'll prove me wrong and be one of the better Power 4 schools. But I'm talking about like the top third of Power 4 schools, or the top 25 Power 4 teams, which most of the time are just the top 25 teams nationally. How would these teams, how would every team in college football perform against the average team that is at the top of the food chain? That is what this power ranking is based off of. And if you're wondering where a computerized power ranking is, because yes, it's going to be more objective, that is coming soon. It is coming very soon. It'll be after week 1, just so that some data can get in, and so I can kind of see how it does on the down low. But it's coming very soon. And last year, potential power was very accurate. So keep on the lookout for potential power. But I'm just going to do these own personal top 25 power rankings because, well, they're fun. So first and foremost, I want to look at what teams I think would be in not the fringes, but just inside of that top 25. We're going to start from the worst and save the best for last. And these teams aren't even that bad. Georgia Tech, for context, was at 26th. They barely, and I mean just by the margins, missed. And that's because I still have questions about their defense and about Haynes King and their overall depth. I think they're a really good team, though. But watching how Florida State performed and how up and down they were and how weak they were in the trenches tells me that maybe the game in Ireland was not just a reflection of the fact that Georgia Tech is a contender for the ACC and they are to be taken seriously, but that Florida State was very much overrated, not just by the national media, but by myself. I was wrong. I was wrong. Florida State is, at least at this very moment, not the team who I thought they were going to be. And you'll always hear that on this channel. When I'm wrong, I will say that I'm wrong. And I was wrong on Florida State. Unless they somehow come back and there's an act of God and then they win the ACC, I will remain wrong on Florida State. They were previously 9th. They fell all the way down to 22nd. Kansas State's at 25th. Oklahoma State's at 24th. Iowa State's at 23rd. Florida State's at 22nd. And Tennessee is at 21st. Keep in mind there's only one other team in the ACC who's power rated in my top 25. Georgia Tech and then Clemson and Virginia Tech are literally the first 3 teams out, are those teams. So if Clemson does much better against Georgia than I expect, and if Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech consistently win, they will jump up into these rankings. I just think that the Big 12, while not containing necessarily the same talent level, is quite frankly better coached, better conditioned, and Georgia Tech, honestly, by how they played Florida State, probably better fits in with the Big 12 than the ACC, because Brent Key is a mastermind on the offensive line. They're recruiting well, but that's for the future. As of right now, they're just well-conditioned, well-coached, and they're physical, and they're tough. They're undefeated under Key in underdog matchups against ranked opponents. Tennessee is at 21st. They moved up. So Kansas State, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State stayed steady. Florida State moved all the way down, and Tennessee moved up by 1 spot. In the 16 through 20 range, all of these teams moved up by 1 spot exactly. Wisconsin, Kansas, LSU, Nebraska, and Rutgers were previously 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st, respectively. They simply moved up because Florida State dropped way, way down, in my opinion. Rutgers will be strong on the offensive line. They should have one of the best rushing attacks in all of college football this season. Again, this list is very much still speculative. That's why I'm still talking mostly in a preseason context for these ratings, but just adjusting for Florida State and giving you a breakdown still of how I think the season will go. final conference record predictions, adjusting for week 0, and also adjusted college football playoff predictions, will be on my live show for tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So click the notification bell and hit that subscribe button to get notified when those drop. You're not going to want to miss them. Nebraska should be top 15, top 10 defensively, and their offense should improve with incoming true freshman quarterback Dylan Raiola and a lot of critical returnees and portal additions on offense. LSU is a team that I'm low on compared to some people, but the fact that being low on LSU means that they're still going to be a top 20 team is a testament to the coaching job that Brian Kelly has done there, whereas Ed Orgeron and Les Miles had seasons that were pretty bad at times and horrifically mismanaged talent there. I don't think Kelly will do that, but I think with the defensive issues they had last year, it will take time for Blake Baker and Bo Davis, even as the elite coaches they are, to build that unit back up. And I think that Garrett Nussmeier is a radically different quarterback and also a worse quarterback than Jaden Daniels. So there will be a big step back on offense just because of how elite the offense was last year. The defense won't make up for that. So I think overall LSU will be worse than they were last year, but still a competent team. And if everything comes together, they're a national title contender with the talent they have. Kansas at 17th is explained by the fact that they return almost all of their X-Factor players from last year. Jalen Daniels, Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw. They bring back Lawrence Arnold and Luke Grimm at wide receiver. They return Kobe Bryant and another All-American caliber cornerback in, Mello Dotson. Mello Dotson is actually a bigger and longer player, but Kobe Bryant's the higher-rated player, so they have a nice combo there. And they have Jeremy Robinson and Dylan Wudke at defensive end. And Deshaun Hanukkah and Jared Casey make up one of the deepest tight end rooms in the country. Lance Leipold is still there. I know Kotelnicki is gone, but I think the pieces he left behind and what he left behind is in systematic, not just roster talent or coaching that's instilled in the players, will give Jeff Grimes a lot to work with. If Grimes truly is a bad offensive coordinator, and maybe he is, I just think he's probably average above average. Regardless, you'll see it, I think, in 2025 when a lot of these senior X-Factor players are gone. And at 16th, we have the Wisconsin Badgers. I think they'll improve on offense and improve on defense compared to last year. It's year 2 in the system, and much like Nebraska, I think giving Luke Fickell and Matt Rule time to build up their programs will result in huge dividends for the Badgers and the Cornhuskers. Now, 11th through 15th, we're getting to teams who I think are going to make the college football playoff. Like, all of my college football playoff participants are inside of the top 15. We have Iowa at 15th. Iowa only didn't move because I think that Tyler Santucci's performance on Saturday with Georgia Tech's defense is a testament to how good of a coach Mike Elko is. So Elko and consequentially A&M just got bumped up by 2 spots instead of 1. So they just hopped over Iowa. I have a lot of respect for Mike Elko as is, and the job that Santucci did just told me that, hey, he's a mastermind and he knows how to build a good staff. So it gave me a little more faith in a staff that I already think is perhaps one of the better staffs in the SEC. We'll have to see how that plays out. But they got Connor Weigman, who I think will be a top 10 quarterback if healthy. Moose Muhammad comes back. I like what they have at running back, even factoring in the injury. Nick Scorton is going to be an All-American caliber defensive end. And they also have Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart on the interior of that defensive line and on the edge as well. Really talented players. At cornerback, they got Will Lee, BJ Mays, and just players that, with a top 10 talent roster, don't forget about Tyreek Chappelle as well, and with much better coaching than what Jimbo Fisher gave them, I think A&M is going to break out immediately in year 1. As for Iowa, I kind of skipped over them, but it's because Iowa is, 1, not as fun to talk about, but 2, they're much more known. They return nearly 90% of a defense that was top 4 last year. Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson are perhaps the best 2 linebackers in the country, certainly the best duo at linebacker, starting 2 in the country, as most defenses now are a 4-2-5. And on offense, they return so much and bring in offensive coordinator Tim Lester that they should improve on that side of the ball as well. So Iowa should be much better, I think, than last year. Offensively, they should be, I think, top 100. They even have the potential, in my mind, to be top 75, given the offensive line, tight end, and running back talent they have. And defensively, I think they'll be number 1 or number 2 in the country. I lean toward number 1. I could see an argument, though, for Ohio State or Michigan or even Penn State having a better defense this year. But I lean toward Iowa with Phil Parker. For number 13, we have Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I don't think will win double-digit games despite being ranked this high. They just have an unfortunately tough schedule. But they have a plethora of talented players like Woody Washington, Danny Stutzman, like Peyton Bowen, for example, Billy Bowman Jr. They brought in Dominic Williams from TCU, who LSU wanted, but they got him. And then I think Gavin Sawchuk, Deion Burks, Nick Anderson, some of the skill players they have, Andrell Anthony, will help an offense that has some newness on the offensive line and at quarterback. For Miami, at 12th, skill position, trench play. Only real question, honestly, is the secondary, and they should still be average, above average good there. I think Cam Ward in a much better offense with Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, with great offensive tackles, a good center in Zach Carpenter, and running back Damian Martinez should command one of the best offenses in the country. And Reuben Bain Jr., Simeon Barrow, Tyler Barron, Elijah Alston, Francisco Mauigoa make up a great defensive front. So I have the Hurricanes at 12th. That's the only other ACC team that's ranked here. For the SEC and for the Big Ten, you easily have more than 5. And for the Big 12, we have exactly 5, with Utah at 11th, capping off the Big 12. I don't think Utah's quite a top 10 team, but their defense is good. With Cam Rising and Brant Kuthi coming back after a year off, I think their offense will improve. And Lander Barton and Kareem Reed are up there with Oklahoma State and Iowa in terms of linebacker play. And they also have, I think, an underrated receiver core with Money Parks and incoming transfer Dorian Singer. And you can't forget about Kyle Whittingham either and how well-conditioned and coached they are. We have the Oregon Ducks at 6th, Missouri Tigers at 7th, Texas Longhorns at 8th, Ole Miss Rebels at 9th, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish at 10th. Ole Miss and Notre Dame, like every team except for Iowa, who didn't move up at all, A&M, who moved up by 2, every team from 9th to 21st moved up 1 spot. Again, except for Iowa and A&M. So Notre Dame, I think it's pretty self-explanatory why they moved up, because Florida State fell. My opinion on this team is still the same. I think their schedule now, with how Florida State looked, is incredibly easy, and they're a top 10 team, certainly top 15. Their biggest question is Riley Leonard's health, the offensive tackle room, since Jagasaw is sadly injured, but they have Billy Scroth on the interior of that offensive line. Mitchell Evans is a great tight end when healthy, and Howard Cross III, Riley Mills, Benjamin Morrison, and Xavier Watts, and Jack Kaiser, I think will give Al Golden a top 10 defense this year. And they upgraded at kicker through the transfer portal. So I think Notre Dame, if they were in the ACC or the Big 12, would be the best team in that conference, and I would favor them by a mile to win it. Not a mile, perhaps. It would depend. If they hosted Miami, who I have as the favorite to win the ACC, obviously, I'd favor them by a mile to win it. If they hosted Utah, because I think Utah is a better coached and tougher team than Miami, it wouldn't be the same distance, but playing on the road against a team that has superior talent on both sides of the ball and will probably be better on both sides of the ball, that is an area, or could be better on both sides of the ball. That's an area of interest to me. I think that Notre Dame, if they join a conference, the Big Ten makes the most sense, but they could join the ACC. They could join the Big 12. I mean, I don't know. If they join the Big 12 or the ACC, they could run that conference. And by running that conference and getting wins and still recruiting at the level they do as an independent, they could build themselves like a nice niche where they just dominate the regular season and their only real test is the postseason. And I think that in the new 12-team playoff era, where you need depth more than ever, that would be intelligent. If they believe they can win it all, why not play in a weaker conference and then just save your depth for the bigger games? They have Mike Denbrock, who's an elite offensive coordinator, and I think Freeman is taking this program to a level that Kelly didn't take the program to. So they, I think, could be legitimate national title contenders, not just this year, but in the future. Ole Miss on up are teams I'm confident can win it all. Doesn't mean I think it's likely, but I'm confident they have the ceiling to do so. And I'm just going to leave it at that for Ole Miss, Texas, Missouri, Oregon. And I'll even go as far to say that with number 1 through number 5 in Penn State, Michigan. Really, Michigan through Ole Miss. If you want to play around with any of those teams in any order, I'd actually be fine with it, and I wouldn't be mad at all. I think that there is a drop-off from Oregon to Missouri, like Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, are all within like millimeters of each other. Then there's a few feet to a few yards or meters drop-off, and you get to Missouri, Texas, and Ole Miss, who are close together. And then after Michigan, you have to climb a little bit, a few feet to Ohio State, and then Ohio State and Alabama are razor thin, and then there's like a few... There's probably the length of a football field between Alabama and Georgia, which a length of a football field doesn't take that much to run and doesn't take much to walk either, but it's still a respectable distance. I think Georgia is clearly the number 1 team in the country this year. Alabama and Ohio State make up Tier 1B, whereas Georgia's Tier 1A, or you could go a step further and say Georgia's Tier 1. Alabama and Ohio State are a close but distant in terms of potential, Tier 2, and then like Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, Missouri, Texas, and Ole Miss are Tier 2B to the Tier 2A of Ohio State and Alabama. All of these teams in the top 9 should have one of an elite offense or an elite defense, and special teams is special teams. It's still important, but most of these schools, I think particularly Penn State, Michigan, Alabama, I think even Georgia this year could have a respected great special teams unit, especially with their kicker. Texas will have awesome special teams with Bert Auburn. Missouri had some good units last year. These teams are just all sound all over the field. Their weak link, not even going to say weakness, their weak link for Michigan, for example, is quarterback, wide receiver. I think it's the same for Penn State. They just have a lower floor than Michigan in the trenches and a lower ceiling as well. Ohio State's weakness, I would say, is quarterback and O-line, but again, weak link. Alabama's weak link, is defensive line play. Georgia's could also be defensive line play, but I think they're like top 15, top 10 there. It's just a question of whether they're top 5. Texas, it's the secondary. It could be a little bit of defensive tackle, but I think Alfred Collins is going to be an All-American. Missouri is the entire defense, but an easy schedule plus an offense that I think will be top 5, I think can alleviate that. And they still have some pretty good edge players and front players there. Ole Miss, I can't even really point out an obvious weakness for Ole Miss outside of the fact that quarterback and wide receiver and maybe tight end are the only positions that I look at that I think can be elite this year. But they have a very well-built 2-deep, and I think this will be Lane Kiffin's best team in his tenure at Ole Miss. So that right there is my top 25 power rankings. 25 through number 1. I think it's Georgia's year to lose the title. That's my analysis on all of this. I think this is Georgia's year to win. It's also their year to lose, because part of me thinks that if they don't win it all, you kind of look back on it thinking, well, hey, they should have, but they maybe got upset by Ohio State or Alabama, who wasn't as good for all the games where they didn't play Georgia until they did, and they beat them. Kind of like what Ohio State nearly did back in 2022. Thank you for watching this cut of Touchdown Talk. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, comment your thoughts down below, and share this video around to other college football fans. I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members for sponsoring this channel and video. Thanks to Crash2488 and Braska Rascal for being Heisman members. Thanks to Chris Lane, Connor Little OH, Ismar, and Tyler Nye for being All-American members. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being all conference members. If you want direct message access to me, and also after 6 months of membership, free signed College Football with Sam merchandise delivered to your door, merchandise of your choosing, I may add, sign up as a Heisman member for $25 a month and stick around for 6 months. All-American membership is $10. All conference membership is $5. If you want merchandise regardless, check out my merchandise store via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. It's high quality stuff. I wear it for all of my streams, and that's because it's comfortable, high quality, athletic, stretchy. It's really good clothing, and I encourage you to check out my merchandise store along with my Patreon page, which are in the links in the description and in the pinned comment. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.